Keeping in step with the convention, more commentary and analysis tonight.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
The TNC continues, the Trump National Convention in Cleveland, and Noel Rubinton is here, freelance journalist and friend of the show, to talk about it with us. Greetings, nice to have you tonight. The Dan Yorke State of Mind program focuses on what's going on in Cleveland. If you're watching at 7:30, you haven't seen the new primetime program yet for Wednesday night, including the new vice presidential nominee. If you're watching at midnight, you have, and I semi-apologize for that. We record our programs earlier in the day, and most news days that doesn't matter all that much, but obviously if we're talking about Tuesday night here and you're watching it at midnight, well, you know, you can roll. That's how we roll, so you can roll. Thank you for your patience on that. Hope you're doing well. Couple of things going on locally, though. Did you see this? We're going to have Tim and Dan in, Tim White and Dan McGowan in on Friday. This is the latest. Rep. Carnevale asked for parking tickets at Providence Home. This is the latest saga in this ongoing Target 12 inspired story where State Representative Carnevale owns a home in Johnston that requires that he live there for his mortgage, but also owns a home in Providence where the law requires he live in order to be voting there and be the state representative from District 13. He's been at a Board of Canvassers hearing and got through that with no witnesses called from his rental property / home to verify anything. And then this wacky development, you got to read or watch WPRI.com. He asked a lieutenant in the police department reportedly to park ticket him so that he had some tickets to prove he was going to illegally park. And so the lieutenant said, all right, and then checked in with the bosses. They referred it to the state police, and so that adds to the state police investigation. Now his lawyer is aghast, saying, yeah, I don't know. Boy, I'll tell you, police are credible. I don't know what to tell you about this. And it just is too much. That and a whole bunch more on what's going on locally. Tim and Dan will come in on Friday after all this convention stuff and talk about it. Just crazy. In the meantime, here's a summary of what's happened in Cleveland so far. A couple of headlines. Former rivals take the stage. Well, that's always the case. The locker up thing, Noel Rubinton tells me that he just learned that the Hillary Clinton campaign has decided to really complain about that in a unique way. We'll talk about that coming up. Here's the latest that we have on the convention.
Congratulations, Dad. We love you.
The second day of the RNC proved to be a family affair. After Donald Trump was formally named the GOP's presidential nominee, two of his children addressed the convention during primetime.
He's always helped me be the best version of myself.
I know that when people tell him it can't be done, that guarantees that he gets it done.
Trump's rival turned ally Chris Christie electrified the crowd with his so-called indictment of Hillary Clinton.
In Iran and Russia and Cuba. And here at home for risking America's secrets to keep her own and lying to cover it all up.
The biggest speech of the convention tonight will come from Indiana Governor Mike Pence, who officially became Trump's running mate yesterday.
Ivanka Trump will introduce her father tomorrow on the final night of the convention.
Of course, that means tonight, Wednesday night. Noel Rubinton is here. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to be here.
The locker up thing, the Hillary Clinton team today decided to double down on that a little bit, huh?
Right, so they decided that it was to just play the woman card on that a little bit, and it sounded to them like they were nearly chanting, "Burn her at the stake," which that could be next, the way things are going.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think certainly after today's,
it's
pretty clear that Trump has locked up the anti-Hillary vote. So this convention has all been about why Hillary would be a disaster for the country. And while that's pretty typical for political conventions, it's rare that it's so much. This has really been 100%. There's very little conversation about Trump from a substantive way, what he would do. His kids have been, I think they've been touching on some of those things they said about him, the comments on their report cards, things like that. But in terms of his vision, that hasn't come out yet. They still have 2 more nights, but right now it's an anti-Hillary convention.
Yeah, and Chris Christie, obviously playing the role of the next Attorney General, I guess. Reportedly, he was quite disappointed over not being the vice presidential nominee, but this bulldog thing that he did on Tuesday night, prosecuting the various sagas that he would suggest, and a lot of people would agree, at least in that arena, suggest that Hillary Clinton, let the country down or acted illegally or corruptly. It was quite interesting.
Well, he's continuing to show his bona fides as a Trump backer extraordinaire, as somebody who's really behind Trump 1,000%. The problem with Christie becoming the Attorney General is he's got potential legal problems of his own, going back to Bridgegate in New Jersey, where one of his colleagues recently pleaded guilty. So I think the road ahead for him is not that clear. So he's enjoying the present. And he clearly is relishing the chance to be seen as a leader of the Trump movement.
Let's show a little bit, if you missed it last night, of Chris Christie.
As to Hillary Clinton, the charge of putting herself ahead of America, guilty or not guilty?
It was tricky, his presentation. There had to be, a half a dozen sagas that he laid out and then asked for the verdict from the crowd. The lock her up stuff, though, I don't know whether that was spontaneous or planned.
I think it's spontaneous. I mean, some top Republicans have said they cringed at that. But that's really what the feeling in the hall is. They're unified about being against Hillary. That's really what they have in common. Not much more at this point. You look at Paul Ryan made his speech last night. He mentioned Trump's name twice. He looked like somebody who was almost like a hostage video. He looked so unhappy.
Oh well, let's roll the House Speaker.
I formally declare Donald J. Trump and Michael R. Pence the Republican nominees for President and Vice President of these United States.
That smile was. I mean, I felt like he had his fingers and his toes crossed. That was procedural. That he had to do, and then his own presentation was kind of like, look. I'm being held hostage here, and so are most of us. But we do have a party, and we do have this thing called Congress, and this guy has got to do okay so that we don't lose our shirts. That's kind of how the whole thing came off.
Well, I would certainly hope he would do better in his support for you than he did in his support for Donald Trump. I mean, the lack of enthusiasm was just, it was laughable.
Frankly, most of the establishment speakers that have, and there have been many, who've gone to that rostrum, look like they had to, take something in order to be able to get up there. The enthusiasm from establishment politicians, never mind those who didn't show up, is uncomfortably low.
So some of the greatest enthusiasm has been from some of the, quote unquote amateurs, the person from the Fighting League, some of the other speakers who had military experience. But again, a lot of it was against Hillary. I mean, I go back to the first night, that mother talking about her son and blaming Hillary for murdering him. She didn't really say, I'm not sure she ever mentioned Donald Trump.
No. And we can go back 2 nights. We're allowed to do that. What did you think of that? That was awful hard to watch.
It was hard. It was just so raw. You wonder. You just felt like, was she being exploited? Did they need to do that? I mean, they had some other people who had personal interests, but it wasn't quite as unprocessed.
Well, we've always had this little dynamic between what plays in the arena at any convention and what plays at home. And they can be two very different things. Having experienced a handful of convention coverage, obviously I'm not there this time around, but having been in convention halls and then going home that night or waking up the next morning and watching the coverage and then hearing from people back home about what they saw and what they thought can be two very different things, or at least the level of what you felt in the arena didn't happen through the television.
Well, I'll give you an example of one which I think was pretty much the same, which Donald Trump Jr. A lot of people said that was the speech of the convention so far.
Okay, listen, my bias is clear. People know I'm not a Trump fan, but I thought he was okay. I thought he did a nice job, but the falling over themselves in the arena, is that what you're talking about?
Well, even out of the arena. I mean, there's been a lot of, maybe just by comparison.
I didn't mean to cut you off. What was your thought on that?
Well, it's just that it hasn't been a convention with a lot of great speeches.
No.
So he gave a pretty good speech, and it seemed great.
Amen. Thank you for saying that, because I've been wondering whether I lost my mind and whether my own personal bias, which is clear. I mean, anybody who watches the show on a regular basis or listens on the radio, and the phone calls, I sit there and just take pellets all day long on WPRO weekdays 3 to 6. And my last couple of guests have added fuel to the fire because they haven't been Trump fans. But I had to check myself last night as I was watching. We have a piece of that, don't we? Do we have a piece of Trump Jr.? We don't. We did. We don't. Apologize. Well, you saw him in the package anyway. I thought, listen, he's not a professional politician speaker, but guys like Smirkanish on CNN are talking about, well, regardless of what Dad does, we've now established that we may have a potential political leader for the future. I mean, the bar's been here anyway. Don't they recognize that? It was good. It was not great. Yes.
No,
You're shaking your head.
No, I think it was good. I mean, it was compared it to Tiffany Trump. That was just the tribute of a child. He had some more substance behind it.
I think there's this dynamic that happens inside the arena where even the talking heads have so much adrenaline for the coverage of the event that they tend to hyperbolize the impact of everything that they have just seen. Speech analysis, analysis, and we're sitting on the couch going, yeah, right?
Yep, definitely agree.
Is America moving, you think, on this convention in any particular way?
It's hard to believe that he's changed anyone's mind. I mean,
yeah.
Maybe I mean, the grand finale is yet to come.
Right.
But so far, he's just kind of solidifying his base, which he had during the primaries, which is all the people who think that Hillary Clinton, maybe she should be burned at the stake. I mean, she's been so demonized, right? I mean, she's been so demonized that it's just more of that same.
All right. When we come back, there is a development in the Melania speech controversy. We'll talk with Noel about that. And also, the Republicans in Rhode Island have made a little noise, maybe more noise back home than they did on a national level. We'll discuss that with Noel as well. But before we do that, I just want to remind you that if you're thinking about remodeling your home, specifically your kitchen or your bath, the recommendation is right there in the corner, Cumberland Kitchen and Bath Design Center. Look, they will do as much as you need to do when it comes to the diligence and preparation and thinking about what an investment in remodeling will actually mean. Is this just a touch-up? You just want to get some more traffic in the kitchen or a little bit more utility in the bathroom? Or is this something that really is going to change the entire feeling of the home, the value of the home, the resale value of the home? All these things are what you talk about with your designer, who will be your project manager at Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center. I highly recommend. When we come back, more about the convention. Stay with us. As if you don't know enough about the Melania speech controversy from Monday night already, here's the semi-latest on it.
Your word is your bond, that you do what you say you're going to do.
Your word is your bond, and you do what you say.
A source with knowledge of the original tells CBS News that the speech, as delivered, bore almost no resemblance to the one crafted by the 2 seasoned speechwriters hired for the occasion.
The only limit to your
limit to the height of your achievements
is the strength
the reach of your dreams and your willingness
to work hard for them.
Matthew Scully and John McConnell were brought on to write Melania Trump's crucial address by Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump's husband, after they worked on Paul Ryan's convention speech in 2012 and Sarah Palin's in 2008.
I guess a small-town mayor is sort of like a community organizer, except that you have actual responsibilities.
Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort won't say who scrapped the original speech and added in this.
The values that you work hard for what you want in life.
He also won't admit that the new version cribbed from Mrs. Obama.
Well, there are not that many similarities. There are a couple of phrases.
Word by word in a number of places.
It's basically 3 places in the speech, and it's fragments of words.
She was badly served by staff.
Washington Post columnist Michael Gerson was head speechwriter in George W. Bush's White House, where Scully and McConnell served as speechwriters too.
I think there's clearly a problem here, and they look like a campaign that can't get its act together, but also can't just admit obvious true things in public and deal with them in a forthright way.
Too much. Well, here's the latest. Noel and I have picked this up, and you probably have already heard this already. The ballerina, former ballerina, speechwriter for Melania, has apologized and said that Donald and Melania would not take her resignation. I guess, I'm looking at CNN.com here, I guess what she says is Melania was researching, liked the speech, read some of it over the phone to the speechwriter who wrote those words down, and then when she coughed back her final drafts, between that time never checked to see where they came from and do what she's supposed to do diligence-wise.
I mean, I think we should start by saying this really doesn't matter very much.
No,
so
but the way they handled it made it matter.
It does, and the fact that they've wasted a good chunk of their convention letting people talk about it, speaks again to their lack of competence, lack of experience in running a political organization. I mean, in the end, speeches get sliced and diced a million times every day. But sourcing them is important because you don't want to be caught. Remember, Joe Biden was caught, and it really
jammed him up.
It derailed his time to run for president back in, I think, '88.
Right.
So I think it matters, but they've just kind of made it worse than it was by a lot.
And this guy Manafort more or less is suggesting that you guys are all nuts, that there's hardly any commonality between. I mean, this guy has kind of run his own course in terms, he's been effective bringing this baby home, but it looks like his time of effectiveness might be over as well. They better bring in some real heavy talent for this general election.
I mean, his idea of a talking point was to say that 93% of the speech was original, that only 7% seemed like something else. Now, I don't think that really passes muster. But he was trying to just, get by it by pushing, which, showed that he doesn't understand the environment today where everybody's a journalist and everybody can figure it out. So the person who figured it out was somebody who describes himself as an interior designer / journalist. He's the one who first wrote about it at like 1 o'clock in the morning after the speech.
It's incredible. But I agree with you. It shouldn't have had any impact whatsoever. And it kind of goes to this notion where a lot of the folks who are holding on to the idea that Donald Trump is a disaster for the party, they point to this kind of stuff. Tom Nichols, author of Never Trump Confidential in the New York Times, said this last night on the show.
I'm worried about the corrosive effect that electing an emotionally unstable huckster will have on the future of American democracy. This is bigger than liberalism or conservatism. It's bigger than whether Hillary Clinton gets to pick another Supreme Court justice. It's bigger than the fight against ISIS. If we are going to go down the path of this kind of mindless, ignorant populism, then we don't have a future as a republic. We don't have a future as a functioning democracy.
He suggests that 4 years of Hillary, even with judicial appointments to the Supreme Court, will be less dangerous than Donald Trump.
Well, he's definitely putting out Hillary's line of attack already. I mean, she's already done commercials on this. Next week, we're going to be inundated by this. I don't think the attacks on Trump are going to be quite as personal. I don't think there'll be anybody say, lock him up, guilty. But I think the line of attack is going to be exactly what Tom said, which is that he's not qualified to be president, and he presents a real clear and present danger to the country.
He suggests that the Ryans of the world and the Sessions of the world and all those folks who are going through the motions at this convention are doing so with their fingers and toes crossed to hold themselves up and the like. You agree?
I agree. They're trying to protect their own hides. They figure the closer that Trump gets, the fewer people lose in the Senate, particularly, and in the House as well. But that's a pretty defensive strategy.
Yeah. Well, it's been a very defensive election when you have 70% of Americans saying that they're going to vote against somebody, motivated to vote against somebody. When we come back, the Rhode Island Republicans get into the story, sort of.
Unfortunately, government is not working in Rhode Island for the people, as the state is run by a corrupt Democrat political machine for the last 80 years. In our state, we are constantly ranked near the bottom, recently ranked 50th worst in terms of our business-friendly climate. Democratic leadership in our state has been rampant with corruption, lack of transparency, and unethical conduct, which makes it no surprise that the Democratic presidential nominee is supported by each and every one of Rhode Island State Democratic leadership. It should therefore come as no surprise that Rhode Island delivered, sorry Jersey, the largest margin of victory in a three-way race with the most amount of votes cast in the history of a Republican primary, with over 64% for Donald J. Trump.
Doreen Costa is in front of Brendan Bell, the GOP chairman, jumping up and down. She might have to go potty. She probably put herself in front of Brendan 2 hours in advance to make sure she had some camera time. We love Doreen, but come on, man. And Joe Trillo, the state rep, standing there. I don't know about this is a good idea with this speech, but what the hell, I'm retiring soon anyway, so we'll see. What was your take?
I think the failed cooler and warmer campaign was significantly more successful for Rhode Island than that speech.
It's been the source of debate on WPRO. Now, because we tape the TV show prior to the afternoon drive radio program, Brandon's been joining me at 5 o'clock every afternoon. He and I have already, so now that you're watching this, have already talked about this. I'm still, though, formulating as I record this with you, how I think about it. I'm somewhat ambivalent about this. You know, the Democrats here, oh, what a terrible thing for tourism.
But usually people use that roll call time to say something great about their state.
True.
Right? I mean, they talk about the wonders of
nature.
nature.
Dell's Lemonade, New York System Wieners. Instead, hey, we're corrupt. We're choked by the Democrats.
But it fits the Rhode Island personality. So.
Yeah, you know what? In a way, I don't know. I think the convention has been such an upside-down exercise already. I'm not so sure it's the end of the world. No.
I think 5 people saw it besides us.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's not like anybody was watching it. Right. Although I will tell you this, if you're trying to make a point about politics in Rhode Island, what you've done is created a conversation in Rhode Island. I don't think the nation blinked an eye over that speech, right? So in a way, it's kind of an interesting take. What's your overall summary judgment about what you've seen so far with the convention and where we're going next week?
Well, it's incomplete. I mean, I think it's going to come down to Trump's speech. People say often that you could have a great speech by the candidate and it could erase everything else that happened. So I think that, while it's interesting, sometimes entertaining to watch this, it's all going to come down to Thursday night.
And how much come late August, September, how much does America retain from these conventions anyway?
Only kind of like a sense, a feeling. So I think but a lot of people have that feeling already. Look, and they say they can't stand Donald Trump, they can't stand Hillary Clinton. So the question is, will the convention personas of them change that at all?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Final word when we come back. We'll continue with, we were just in the middle of a conversation about a whole bunch of things. I will tell you this, Noel made a point during the break to me that he thinks that the DNC is probably going to be a little bit of a ho-hummer versus the Republican National Convention or the Trump National Convention. That very well may be the case because this thing has been, while hardly impressive, certainly peculiar. Predictable will probably be the DNC word next week. In the meantime, Mark Zaccaria, former chairman of the state Republican Party and now a candidate again for office here in Rhode Island, will join us tomorrow. Don't forget, Tim and Dan will join us on Friday on the Carnivalogy parking ticket scandal. We'll see you on the radio at 3 o'clock tomorrow on WPRL. Thanks for watching. Good night.